Welcome to the WedPro podcast, the podcast for WedPros no matter their stage.
Hi, and before we get into today's episode, I'm really excited to introduce you to Amber Lucas from Kaluna and Time. Amber works with wedding businesses on their website, but what I love about the conversation that we're going to have today is that we are not just talking about whether your website looks nice, because I know a lot of wedding suppliers have been told to think about their website in a pretty surface level way. Make it pretty, ensure that, it matches your brand colors, add some nice images, put a contact button somewhere obvious. And yes, all of that absolutely does matter. But I think the bigger question really is, what is your website making people feel before they ever even inquire around trust, around helping them understand whether you're the right fit or not? And are you making that next step really nice and easy? Or potentially, is it quietly causing a little bit of friction, maybe some confusion or doubt, that then you have to try and fix that later in your inquiry process? Or worse, maybe the couple don't even inquire at all. And this is really why I've got Amber on the podcast today and what we really want to discuss with you today. Because if you've listened to the last few episodes that we've put out, we've talked a lot about follow-up and about ghosting and why just checking in is just often too weak to move your couple forward. But really, all of that sales journey starts earlier than the follow-up, right? It starts earlier than that call, and it starts earlier than the inquiry ever happens. And it often starts as part of your website. So today, Amber and I are going to talk about websites in a way that you might not have heard before. Not just about what should go onto the page, but what works inside that bigger sales journey for your couple as well, where it's going to build confidence, where it might cause a little bit of hesitation, and why a beautiful website still might not be converting the right couples for you. So Amber, welcome. I'm really pleased to have you here. And before we get on to the practical side, I'd love you to just tell everybody a little about you and a little bit about Kaluna and Time and the kind of work you do with wedding businesses.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on here talking to you today. So I am a website designer for wedding businesses. So I worked in the wedding industry for 14 years before going into websites. But I've always loved doing the back end of stuff, doing websites. And I've had other businesses where I've done websites and sold products. So I know like the back end of business, and I know how to run a wedding business as well, and put all of that strategy into my wedding business website.
That is amazing. And I think it's also important for people to know that this isn't just you, like you have done a lot of content stuff, but what I'm interested in for this conversation is also that you're a working mum as well, because I've been having a lot of conversations recently about, it would be really wonderful if we all sat here and pretended that we all have the same 12 hours to sit down and focus purely on our business, right? But actually the reality of running a business quite often doesn't look like that. So Amber, alongside the business, tell me a little bit more about what life looks like for you behind the scenes.
Yeah, so I'm a mum to 2 kids. I've got a 4-year-old daughter, she's going to be 5 soon, and a 2.5-year-old son. So yeah, it's definitely a juggle, especially if they're ever poorly or anything. Yeah. So my son's at nursery, my daughter's at school. But yeah, if they're poorly, I did an event recently down in London and my daughter had tonsillitis. So I was very lucky that my husband could stay home and after her and make sure she was getting everything that she needed. But yeah, it's definitely tricky to juggle everything and finish by school pickup time. Yeah, definitely when you're trying to like get something finished and then it's like school pickup time.
Yeah, I think it is. I think, it's kind of that law, isn't it? That you give yourself a certain amount of time and you'll actually get it done. But then also, if you think you've got forever, you will take so long to do it. And I think, gosh, if you want to get something done, give it to a mum, right? Because a mum will be able to just understand, or a parent, right? Understand, okay, the juggle, add something else to my plate. But I think I'm just kind of interested. And I suppose this is why really, as we don't run businesses from like a little vacuum where, that everything goes perfectly all of the time and that we all have the same amount of time. And obviously we all, we wake up, we go to sleep, we've all got 24 hours, but we don't all have the same 24 hours. And I think that's why it's so important to have tools and the things that you spend time on and the things that you put out there to be working for your business and for your goals, right? So really the first kind of thing that I wanted to ask you in terms of just setting the tone of the whole conversation here with you, when you are looking at a wedding supplier's website then, what are you really looking for underneath the design? Because I think that really fits into, people will spend a lot of time putting together something that they think looks pretty or thinks that represents, especially in such a visual industry like the wedding industry, where we are being judged on visuals and how is this all going to fit and come together for somebody's day, where effectively they're putting the most important day of their life really on show. They're quite exposed to their friends, their family. And I suppose as wedding suppliers, we're trying to convey that kind of onto our websites in kind of the subject of kind of making our tools work harder for us and the marketing that we're doing out there. What are you really looking for when you're looking at wedding suppliers' websites underneath the design? What does it need to do?
Yeah, it's a really important point because I think a lot of people think, oh, I'll get new branding and I'll look like this luxury wedding planner or wedding florist, when actually you could have the prettiest branding in the world and you could have the prettiest website in the world. But if you've not got the strategy underneath it that actually guides couples through landing on the page, understanding that this is the right person for them, and then guiding them through to actually send an inquiry and then go on to book them. If you've just got pretty pictures, it's not going to achieve that journey. So it's very important to make sure that you're speaking to your couples and showing them why you're different to other suppliers and why they should book you, but in a way that helps them feel like they're thinking, yes, this is the wedding supplier for me. So yeah, it's definitely not just about pretty pictures and pretty branding. There needs to have the strategy underneath.
I think that is a really good point, because I think so many wedding suppliers focus on, how their website looks really before they even really think about how it needs to guide somebody. What do you think a potential couple is subconsciously, maybe they don't even know that they're doing it, but what do you think they are looking for when they land on a wedding supplier's website?
Yeah, it's a really important point because I think you have to put yourself in the shoes of a couple. So I think a lot of us, as you're so close to your website and it feels like, oh yeah, it's got about me and it's got my packages on it.
Yeah.
But actually couples are kind of looking for what the experience is going to be like. If they were to book you and choose you for their wedding day, what does that feel like for them? What's that experience look like? So rather than saying just what's included, or maybe for a bridal makeup artist, it might be, that you use a specific brand of makeup, whereas couples probably looking for how that then conveys the feelings and the emotions to them on their wedding day. So say it was a bridal makeup artist, a bride is going to want to know that the makeup artist can calm their nerves down, make sure that they're not being interrupted, designate somebody to answer their questions, make sure that they have that time in the morning to actually relax and be present and enjoy having their makeup done. And so it's conveying that kind of messaging on the website rather than just what's included. It's how it's going to actually make that couple feel on the biggest day of their life.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because I think suppliers often see that kind of differently. And I suppose there isn't really a website school for businesses to go to. And I think what they think is quite often, and I see this on Instagram as well, that people use their website or Instagram as a portfolio of their work rather than looking at it as part of actually, no, you actually want somebody to do something from this, a stage and a process. Is there a difference then between a website that looks beautiful and one that actually converts?
Yes, definitely. So like you said, I think a lot of wedding businesses use their website as a portfolio. So they might have some gallery pages and they look beautiful, but if somebody was landing on that page, say from Google, if Google could even find it, if there wasn't much copy on there, they need to know where they're based, maybe what the venue was, and the kind of the style and the experience. So it's really important that no matter what page somebody lands on the website from, they can get all of that information, and you don't need to bombard them with information. So every single page doesn't have to have loads and loads of copy, but something that you can do maybe with a gallery page is you could put where the venue is, what kind of style the wedding was, what season it was in, that kind of information that's going to help people. Because then if they looked at that gallery and they saw that it was a summer wedding, but they're having an autumn wedding, they might think, oh, and I know that to us as wedding professionals, and say if you're a photographer maybe, that you might think, well, yeah, but they'd know what it would be like in this place, but or in this season. But if a couple can go to your website and see, okay, this photographer has shot a wedding at this venue in autumn and it looks like this, and this is exactly what I want for my wedding, they're going to immediately think, okay, this person can do what I want. So it's important to not only showcase what you can do, but also showcase it in a way that makes couples think, this is the person, this is exactly how I want my wedding to look, and that person can do that for me.
And
Yeah,
that real
rather than just-
variation, I think there, Amber, as well, like that variation that you said there of like different ways that you've worked. I think sometimes when we think niche in kind of, you know, we've heard, oh, it's really important to niche down. And some people take that to be like, oh, I can only showcase a certain style on my website because I would like, you know, a certain style of couple. And although that's not wrong, I think it's really important, like as wedding in this industry, me not so much. You very very much will be able to relate with this, Amber, but very creative sort of thinkers and visual kind of thinkers. You're used to putting things together that look pretty. You're used to being able to imagine and envisage what end products look like, right? And what that blank canvas, and then how all of the different elements of a wedding really come together. But you know, as wedding suppliers, I think that because this is our world and that we're very close to our business, and also we surround ourselves with other people who are like us, right? So we surround ourselves with other wedding professionals who also think like this. So that is amazing. But also what can happen with that is that you become very almost out of tune with how your client or your couple are kind of experiencing that for themselves. So being able to showcase your work in different seasons, different ways, different themes doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to attract your client, right? But actually it's so super important for your couple to be able to visualize whether it's that venue or maybe a similar style venue, but actually, okay, how you shot that, you mentioned there in that kind of autumn light. Oh, well, actually I'm getting married and this beautiful tree in the venue that I'm getting married at, and I can absolutely imagine now that at my wedding. And I think that it's funny there because you mentioned about gallery shots there. I think one of my pet peeves is going onto websites and looking at kind of pictures with no context on a gallery, or kind of you know, to put pictures on your site, so you do it as a box ticking exercise and you just dump it all into a gallery kind of thing. But actually having that context there for your couples, and also massive tick for SEO, right?
Yeah, definitely. So if you've got, say you were a photographer and you worked at a specific venue, and then you have an individual gallery on your page, so it might have the couple's name and then the wedding venue. If then that couple type in, you know, photographer that's worked at this wedding venue, or recommended photographer for this wedding venue, because you've got that copy on the page, you're more likely to come up on Google for it. Even if they were just searching for the venue, you might even come up as well. So it could be galleries of photos at this venue, and then when couples search that, you're more likely to come up on Google. And then you also, if it was a venue you really wanted to do more weddings at because it's one you absolutely love, you're more likely to get bookings there because people have found you through that and they know that you've worked there X amount of times. And then they'll think, okay, they know the venue very well. The people there obviously trust them, and it gives them more confidence in booking you. Because I think that's one big thing at the end of the day, is these couples are trusting you with one of the biggest days of their lives. And like you touched on, they're exposed, they're in front of their friends and family, they don't want anything to go wrong. And it's high pressure. And they need to know that you can do what you're saying and showing that you're going to do. And, you know, so it's making sure that your website builds trust and builds confidence around you to show the couples that, yes, I can do what I'm saying I can do.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is really interesting because it all really links to that next part, which hopefully as the wedding supplier, you're sat thinking, right, okay. And I always say there's one thing having a website, it's another thing getting people to actually visit the website. And then it's a whole other thing then having a website that then converts into a sale, right? Now, a couple might not be sat there consciously thinking, okay, I don't have enough certainty here to go ahead. But if the website feels a bit vague or difficult to navigate, right, they just leave and they just move on. And they don't always know why. And then I suppose as a wedding supplier, you don't really always get that information, because the information that you're getting is the people who do go through that process and who do click send the inquiry. You don't get the information of the people who bounced and left, right?
Yeah, definitely. And you can look at you could go into it if you were really into like the stats and everything. You could go into Google Analytics and you can actually see where couples leave a page.
Yeah.
So it might give you a bit of an idea, but not necessarily their thought process. So yeah, you can look into it a little bit more, but you'd never really, I don't think you'd ever fully know. Or, you know, if there was a place where a lot of people were leaving, then you'd think, okay, maybe I need to tweak this here or change the journey before it. But yeah, I don't think you ever really know their full thought process of why they're leaving. So it's hard to make
and
changes.
I suppose it's not just about couples knowing that they can afford you, right? But it's also, they just need to feel certain enough to choose you. And your website does play such a massive role in that certainty before you even ever speak to them.
Yeah.
What would you say are the website elements that build trust quickly for a wedding supplier?
Okay, yeah. I would say having testimonials on there, but not having them on their own page. Because I see this a lot where you've got your homepage and there's no testimonials on there, and you've got your packages page and there's no testimonials, and they're all just on one individual page. And you might have clicks through to it, but if you've got, say on your homepage, you've got your header, which speaks directly to couples. This is what I do for these couples, and this is like the experience of it. And then you've got maybe a bit about your packages, and then you've got a review or 2 or 3 or 4 that are concise. So you've picked out the best parts of that review that you want to share with couples, and then they're just scrolling, and then you might have another section a bit further down, then they see it. So they automatically go to the header, they read that and think, okay, yeah, that sounds like what I want. Then they go to the packages and they think, okay, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. And then they read a review that kind of shows people somebody else has booked this person and they were amazing. You know, the makeup looked amazing, but she kept me stress-free on the morning. The flowers looked amazing. The parts of the testimonial that really speak to what you do best, that's what you need to share, and you need to space them out throughout the website. And before the package, before the prices on the packaging page, put it on there as well, because then they see the value that you've brought to other couples, and then that automatically makes them think, okay, I trust this person. You know, all of these 10 other people have said this about them, and this is really good. And it shares that trust building with them.
Yeah, so where do you think trust gets lost on websites then, even when the supplier is brilliant at what they do? I suppose, do you ever see suppliers assume that their images are going to do all the work as well for them? And what do you think that they could do differently?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people, especially maybe photographers or videographers or content creators, think that the images are just going to speak and they're just going to look at it and go, yeah, this is what I want. But actually, you need to showcase the value and the experience behind that as well. We can all look at a picture and be like, oh yeah, that looks really nice, but not really act on it. Like we were talking earlier about how people are getting found in AI search.
Yeah.
And it might look like, with the text, it might look like, okay, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. And then you see a photo and it might not be anything like what you've got in your head, because it's so subjective, isn't it? Like visuals and what things look like. I could explain to you how I maybe want flowers to look and draw a picture or come up with an idea. And then you have the same thing, but yours is different in your head. So it's completely subjective to each person. So I think just having photos on your website is definitely not enough. You need to have the copy that kind of backs it up as well, and the reviews, just to make sure that they know exactly what they're getting. Because also with photos, one photo might be one price and one photo might show something that's another price. People need to understand what they get for their money as well. Yeah. And that kind of needs to be explained in a clear way for them to understand.
So what role does copy play then in making somebody be able to feel clear and make them feel confident enough to take that next step with a wedding supplier?
Yeah, so I think copy is really, really important. It's one of the most important parts of a website, because if you're just talking about yourself, talking about what's included, it's hard for couples to imagine what that then turns into in their wedding day. So what that looks like for them. So what I see a lot of the time is people sharing like a few photos and then hi, I'm, and then their name and all about them, like what uni they went to, or, you know, how many dogs they've got.
Life story.
Yeah. It is important, obviously, because a lot of the time, if you're a planner, you're going to be heavily involved in the wedding day. And a lot of the time we are very involved in the wedding day. So they do want somebody that they're going to vibe with, that's got a good personality. But before that, they need to know whether they're right, you're right for them first. You could go through, hi, I'm Amber and I do this. But then if they scroll down and then they see photos or you describe more and it's not what they're looking for, they're still going to leave regardless of who you are. They're not just going to book you for your personality, they're going to book you because you can do what they want and you've got a good personality, or, you know, and you vibe well. But they're not just going to book you because they get on with you, you know, if you can't do what they're looking for on your wedding day. So the copy is really important to showcase what you do, but almost like in a reverse psychology way of, this is what I do, but this is how it then turns into the experience for you. So rather than saying luxury wedding planner in London, you might say wedding planning for London couples who want a stress-free, intimate wedding in the city. So it turns it round of, okay, this is stress-free for them. And they're thinking, oh, we just want like a really small London wedding that we don't want to stress about it. We don't want a stressed engagement. That copy there immediately speaks to that person and that couple. And they think, yeah, okay, this is who we want, because they know they're in my brain and they know what I'm looking for. Whereas luxury wedding planner in London doesn't really say much.
No, I always ask, you know, when a supplier tells me that they're luxury, or I say, well, what does luxury mean to you? Because luxury means so much different. It's so subjective, like you mentioned before, with kind of images and how we see that. Luxury to one person could mean, you know, 5-star experience, red carpet experience everywhere they go. And that could be very normal for somebody else. Or, you know, it could be luxury to have a takeaway once a week. That could be a luxury. So it's just so vast. It's interesting there in terms of what you said there about the about page. What I say to the clients is, I don't love that it's called an about you area, or about, because it's not about you. It's about what you can do for them. And that's how you should write. I think it's more about making somebody feel really understood about that kind of space that they're in their life, and that, and the moment they're in and what matters to them. I'd like to get into kind of mistakes because I know people like this bit. I think it's useful, especially when it's not about becoming shamey or anything like that. Most people start from a place of building their own website, right? Most people. And most wedding suppliers are not trying to make their website confusing. What I see is people usually build it in stages, right? They've added things over time. They might have copied a little bit of what they see somebody else do. And then really one day they look at it with a bit of fresh eyes, probably off the back of a podcast like this, Amber, or like a training that we did in the WedPro Studio mastermind that I run. And then they realize that potentially maybe it's not really reflecting their business anymore. And I know you're going to say yes, because we've had a session this morning, but are there some common website mistakes that you see wedding suppliers making?
Yes.
Shocker.
So yeah, we spoke about this earlier in the training, but for anybody not in WedPro CEO and listening to the podcast, there are definitely some key mistakes that you probably are making on your website that are making couples that are not the right fit for you Enquire, or you've just got hundreds of inquiries, but none of them are the right fit, or you're getting ghosted after you send in the pricing. So a few things that you can make sure so that this doesn't happen to you is making sure, number one, let's start with your imagery. So your imagery is really important on your website, because not only does it showcase what you do, but it also attracts the people. So if you've got these kind of, say you're a florist and you've got loads of wildflower photos, but you want to book really bold, bright, colourful weddings that kind of stand out, but your website all has these wildflower weddings on there, the people that are looking for the wildflower weddings are going to come on, look and go, oh yeah, this is what I want. And they're going to see if you can do what they want to do. And what your website is showing them is, yes, I can do wildflower weddings. And then you get this inquiry through, and maybe it's not of a budget that you might want to go for a higher budget, and they just want the cheapest thing because they just want a small intimate wildflower something, bouquet or something. And then you get this inquiry through and you're like, well, it's not really what I want to do, but it's getting some money in, so I'm going to take this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to have more wildflower weddings for my portfolio. And you've not got the big, bright, bold weddings that have got a minimum spend, because your website's only showing them that you can do this specific style. So making sure that you've got photos on your website that showcase not only what you can do, but in a way that also showcases what you want to attract more of as well. So if you could maybe do a styled shoot that is this big, whatever you want it to be, do a styled shoot. So you've got those photos that you can show people and use on your website to actually showcase, this is the kind of weddings that I do and I do well and I want to do more of. So
people buy. People buy what they can see, right?
Yeah.
Like and if they can't see it, you're making people do too much work by
Yeah.
wondering themselves.
Yeah.
Well, and you'll think, oh well, how different is it, right? I cut the flowers, I arrange them nicely, it's the same process. I've done a bouquet, buttonholes, whatever it may be, but you're making your couple do too much of the hard work and the hard thinking, and they're just not going to do it. They're not going to sit there. I think a lot of the time suppliers fall into, or maybe they don't even think about it, but they kind of feel that this is the only decision that your couple is going to be making. And it just isn't the case at all. And also, people are not planning their weddings in this kind of vacuum of no other decisions or no other life chaos going on, right? It's not like, oh, we sit down and we have a clear week where all we do is sit and focus on wedding planning, and that's just amazing, and we can make all of these decisions. They're quite often making 6, 7, 8 decisions at once, also running through kind of logistics or operational management of things. Maybe they probably have never put on an event at this scale ever in their life. Everything is new. Everything feels a little bit new and different and uncomfortable. And if you can imagine yourself like a time that you've done something that felt new, you can understand why there's some nerves and the couple needs a little bit of reassurance. But also, it's difficult for them to put it together. And if you're going to make them do too much work, they'll go somewhere else for somebody that has made it super, super simple for them, right?
Simple to see. Yeah. And I think if you've not got those photos on your website, but you can say you can do it, that's relying on them to have the imagination to be able to think, okay, but what's it going to look like? Because you can give somebody a photo, but like we said earlier, people can interpret it in different ways. So, you might have this photo of a bouquet and then it might not come out how they thought or how you thought. And so it's just a lot simpler if everybody involved knows, okay, this is what I can do and this is my style and this is what it will look like on your wedding day, and just showcasing that up front so everybody knows and everybody's clear on everything.
For sure. Are there any mistakes that look small but can have a big impact on inquiries?
Yes. So I would say call to actions. So a call to action is when you basically tell somebody, so you might have a button or a link to go to the next step. So it's saying, send an inquiry or book now. And I think people either miss them off completely. So it seems I've got a link here and it goes to here, but then you get to the bottom of the page and there's just nothing. It just kind of ends. And then couples get to the bottom and they're like, oh, what do I do next? Do I send an email or do I go to and they've got to scroll all the way back up to go to the inquiry, the pricing page, and go all the way through, or send an inquiry. And it just doesn't make it easy for them to do that. And how you said, they're making all these decisions. They're also comparing you with multiple other suppliers. So you've got to make it the easiest for them and not have to jump through these hoops, and, make it easy to say, send an inquiry, see our packages, and not have too many on the page as well that they're going to be like, oh God, what do I do first? But you could have the header, a little bit of an about section, not an about section, the experience that you bring, and then the packages. It could just be see our packages or view our pricing or see our services, and click through to that link, but not making it confusing that they're like, oh, is this, personalize it a bit. So it could be, if you were a makeup artist, book your trial, but have it on there so that they're not confused about what to do next, and then they're going to be more likely to make that next step and do that. I always compare it to if you watch a YouTube video and they say don't forget to like and subscribe, and then you go, oh actually I like your content, I'll subscribe. Whereas if they hadn't said that, you might not think to do it, and then you're going to leave and then they don't have you subscribed. So it's doing that on your website and telling them, see our packages, view our pricing, send an inquiry, book your trial. It's telling them what to do next, and then they'll be more likely to make that step.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Okay, what do you think about copy? I'm going to take you back to copy now and kind of mistakes that are made in copy. What do you think about wording like bespoke, luxury, timeless, unforgettable? Do you think they help, or do you think sometimes they become a little bit like wallpaper, as in like fades into the background? And does it mean for a couple who may be comparing you to 4 or 5 other people, do you think those words have become lost a little bit of their meaning inside the wedding industry now? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people use them because they think it makes them sound maybe a bit more high end, a bit more professional, but it doesn't. If you've got 5 other people saying that, it doesn't differentiate you from anybody else. So I know it's hard because you're thinking, what else can I use? Like, I do create a bespoke bouquet for somebody.
Sure.
So it is difficult. I completely get it. then on the other end, you might maybe go to AI and try and get something from there, which also uses the same kind of set of words.
Sure.
So it's important to kind of think about what you do and think about how you can explain it in a way that they're going to see how you're different to everybody else, rather than say timeless or classic or bespoke or luxury. We said earlier, luxury is such a subjective word, because what's luxury to one is not luxury to another. And I've definitely seen luxury people, luxury suppliers, and you go to their website and to me it doesn't look luxury, but to somebody else that might look luxury. So it's such a subjective word that it doesn't really say much, because what it means to one person, it doesn't mean to another. So I think definitely using different words, going back to maybe the flowers, it could be bold, bright, bold, abundant flowers, that kind of thing, where they can actually visualize what you're saying and how they can visualize that in a product or in a service, rather than words that, don't
It's
really
funny because when you said that there, I thought actually, as soon as you said bright, bold flowers, abundant, like I've got a picture in my mind, right? Whereas where you say timeless, well, how do we actually, what does timeless look like in somebody's mind? I think that's a really easy way for people to think about it when they're reading their copy. Like, is this creating a vision and a picture? And is that then matching the vision and picture that more of the couples that I would like to have? How do you know when a website has too much information versus not enough information?
Oh, that's a good question. So if it's got not enough information, I would say you will definitely know, because people will be asking you all the questions. So they'll be in your DMs or in your email asking you questions that you're thinking, well, do you not know the answer to this? Or it's on the website.
It's on my website.
Yeah. And it's probably not. So I think definitely having your copy answer people's questions, and even having a frequently asked questions section.
Yeah.
You can definitely do that on your homepage or on your packages page. Under each section, on one section of the website, have a frequently asked questions section that just answers everybody's questions. Because if you've only got photos and not a lot of copy, and everyone's just asking you, well, what do I do next? Or how much is this? Or can we do this? Your website's not doing its job. Your website should be telling everybody what you do, who you do it for, where you're based, your pricing, your value and your experience. And that is when you know that your website's doing its job, because people don't just ask you all the questions, they ask if they can book you. So instead of having, when can we do this? Can we do this here? What's this like? They already know, because your website's already shown them and told them exactly what you do, who you do it for and where. And then it just avoids all the questions, and that everything's been answered on the website for them.
And I think that's a really important point, because I think suppliers can think that if only they get them into a conversation, right, that I'll almost hide some of the information, because if I can get them into a conversation, I have got more chance of booking them. Why is that not right, do you think, Amber? Would you say that's the right way to do it? Or I'm guessing not, with what you've just kind of said. But this is what I see a lot of people almost scared to, like, we get this with price. Oh, take my prices off, because then it invites people to ask me about price, right? Whereas actually what we know and what you're telling people is, it's actually, if people are getting to the point where they're having to ask you about price, your website hasn't done its job, right? But for people listening and thinking, oh, I might not be getting as many bookings as I want to get, and I just want to get people into conversations, because if I get people into conversations, I've got a chance of booking somebody. How is that the wrong way to look at this?
I think, like you say, people think, oh, I'll get them on a call and my personality will win them over. But if you've been a bit vague about what you can do or your pricing, and then you invite a couple onto a call with you, but they weren't the right fit in the first place, like we said earlier, even your personality is not going to win them over. If their budget's $2,000 and you're $8,000, no amount of personality is going to get them from $2,000 to $8,000. So it's kind of filtering out the couples that are wrong for you and making sure that only the right ones come through, kind of like a sieve. You've got these couples that are wrong and they can't get through, and they just know they're not going to get through to this because their budget's wrong, or you can't do what they want. Even if you could get them on a call, you might have a chance of booking them, but not if you're out of their budget or you can't do what they want. They're still not going to book you, even if you can get them on a call. So then you're just wasting their time, wasting your own time. And really, you should be focusing on the people that are right for you instead of the ones that are wrong for you and trying to convert them over.
Yeah, and I think that's really important there, in terms of what you were saying about you can either make the decision now to help attract better fit inquiries, or potentially be bringing in people who are never really aligned in the first place. And then the supplier thinks, right, and this is where I come in, right? The supplier thinks they have a sales problem then, when actually the website or their positioning might not be filtering early enough, or maybe their positioning isn't strong enough. How can a website help a supplier attract better fit couples? Like, where would you say a supplier should start? What does strong positioning look like on a website?
It comes back to the differentiation, I think, of, can you tell me, if I was a couple, can you tell me what makes you different to everybody else? What makes you stand out? Why should I book you? And then if you can't tell me that, I'm going to go to somebody who can, because then I'll know why they're different. I'll know why they're right for me. And I'll know why I should book them over somebody else that's maybe a bit vague, doesn't have a lot of copy on their website, or the copy's not very strong. You know, the photos might be a bit mismatched and they seem like they can do a bit of everything, like a jack of all trades, when actually what I'm looking for is maybe a naked cake. If I was looking for a naked cake and I found a website that had all these iced things and, you know, everything was covered in icing and sugar flowers, but I wanted like fresh flowers on a naked cake, and then I found somebody that was specialized in naked cakes, I'm not going to go and ask the person that does the ice cakes, can you do a naked cake? Because I've already found somebody else that is specializing in that. And if you don't have a speciality, I think just making sure that your style is clear. So like, obviously a photographer might go and photograph at barns, at manor houses, in teepees or marquees, but their style, maybe their editing style is a certain way, or for my edit videos in a specific way. So it's making sure that you have something that makes you stand out and different from everybody else, so that people are like, oh yeah, I love how that person edits their videos and I want a video like this, and then they'll come and book you. Whereas if you just look like everybody else's videos or everybody else's cakes or flowers, people are going to be like, oh, which one do I go for? And then that's usually what happens, is that's when they look at price. Because if they can't work out when why you're different, and maybe you're a cake maker that uses organic ingredients and versus somebody that doesn't, and that person maybe is really strong about using organic ingredients, they'll go and book you. Whereas if I'm just a cake maker that makes naked wedding cakes, and I'm just a cake maker that makes naked wedding cakes, they're just going to compare you on price then, because there's nothing else that's different about you that makes them think, oh, I'll go with this person because they can do this and this. They're just thinking, well, these are both the same, so that one's £200 and that one's £150, I'll go with the £150 one. So it's important to have something that differentiates you from everybody else, and then that's when you can charge the higher prices and people understand why you're charging those higher prices.
Yeah. Okay. This next one here, and I think we touched on it a minute ago, where we were just talking about wanting your website to do a job. I know that there'll be some people sat here thinking and listening, okay, well, it's all great that Katie and Amber are telling me to repel some clients, but how do I do that without kind of saying, I don't want to work with this price shoppers, you know? How do websites and brands really gently repel the wrong sort of people?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I can imagine people thinking, well, I don't want to say I don't want to work with this person, this person, and this person. But it's through the copy and the imagery, and then even maybe having, say, if you're a florist, having a minimum budget. My minimum wedding spend would be £3,000 or £5,000, or, you know, and then people know up front, okay, I can't afford this. This is not for me because I can't afford this. Whereas if you didn't have that on your website, and then somebody was like, oh, can I just have a bouquet and two bouquets for my bridesmaids and then a groom's one? And then you're like, oh, well, no, because my minimum is this. And you've just wasted an inquiry then, really, because you're spending time replying to somebody that can't afford you. But if you hadn't put your prices on your website or your minimum, then they're going to think, okay, I'll just ask if they can just do this. And you're thinking, well, that's not worth my time. Like, you know, that time could be spent getting someone else, getting a new lead, or working on someone else's wedding that is paying my minimum. So it's important to just make sure that everything on your website fits with what you want to happen, and, you know, what couples need to know before they send an inquiry. So if your prices are maybe a bit higher than the norm, then have that on your website, but have it after you've explained the value and the transformation or the experience, so they know what sets you apart, and then they know that you're charging this much for a reason, and they're not just going to send an inquiry because they think, oh, she might do this. Because if you say my minimum budget is £3,000, then they're not going to be like, oh, could you just do this for 400? They're just not going to bother wasting your time, because they know that your minimum is £3,000.
That's it, isn't it? I think people do get nervous when they really put their positioning out there, or they think that clear positioning will stop people from inquiring, but actually if the wrong people are coming through, you're spending so much energy and time on people who are never going to be aligned in that first place really anyway, right? And it doesn't just work in the luxury end of the market or for people at high end spends. It works across the board. And the other thing that, you know, and I say this to my clients all the time, I don't want people to think that you're going to live in this world, especially initially, where you are only going to work with ideal clients, right? And you're going to whack up a website and then that is all you're ever going to do. That's not what we're saying at all. And not when I come to look at your business and speak to you about, okay, who do you do this for? What do you do? Who do you do it for? And what do you bring? If I asked you, other than photographing a wedding, what do you do for your couple? What do you bring to the day? How do you describe that to me? And what would you say? But I think people think, oh, they're so worried about kind of somebody who wasn't a right fit anyway, not inquiring, then actually focusing on getting it really right for the people who are. And it's not to say we all, I don't care who you are, we'll all take on clients from time to time that aren't our ideal. Or, you know, we'll go, well, I've got a random Wednesday free here and I'm going on holiday next year and I want a little bit of extra budget and I'm happy to do it. But that is a different thing totally than feeling like A, your website is never converting anybody, or B, the only inquiries you are getting are price shopping you or ghosting you. That doesn't tend to be a problem with your pricing, or it doesn't tend to be a problem that you're not good enough or your talent or anything like that. It tends to be that your positioning wasn't correct. Because if people do come to your site and don't feel like they can see that vision that they've got for their wedding, or see themselves in your work or in your words and in your images, they will go elsewhere to find that, right? You're making your couples do too much of the work. And I think people are so worried, like, of kind of somebody not inquiring, that they just try and throw everything about it. And that's really what we really want you to understand, I suppose, off the back of this episode, that your website is not separate from your sales process. It's not a different thing. It's not sitting there looking pretty, you know, while that real selling kind of happens later. It already is kind of shaping that sale before the couple ever even reach out to you. And like you said there, Amber, by the time we get onto the call, we filtered out everything, every question, and they may not verbalize those questions, right? So before, when you said, oh yeah, people may ask me that question and they might message me and say, have you done a wedding like this before? Likelihood is they're probably not. They're probably not going to. If they didn't see it, they're not going to do a lot of that work. There will be those that do, right?
But a few,
but generally across the board, they're just going to feel like, okay, well, this isn't right, this isn't for me, and move on very quickly. We're not in a day and age where we can't find another person that does what you do, right? Like, but really, it being your website's doing its job by the time you get onto your kind of inquiry or in kind of your sales conversation. It's just about, okay, are we vibing? Is the date free? And logistics, right? And actually it makes so much of everything simpler. What does a website need to do, Amber, before somebody ever fills in that contact form?
That's a really good question. I would say it needs to give couples clarity that you are right for them and you can do what they're looking for. It needs to show that they can afford you, because there's not really, like we just said, there's not really much point in getting on a sales call with them or them sending an inquiry to check your availability if they can't actually afford you. And just showcase and make it easy for them to actually send that inquiry. So the contact form needs to be easy to fill out, which is another kind of thing to think about. But
it's the whole of the podcast, that one. I feel
a whole podcast on that. But if you're making them jump through hoops to find the information, work out if you're right for them, then send an inquiry, they're just not going to do it. People don't have very long attention spans these days. You can see people scrolling through TikTok and they just watch 2-3 seconds and then they're off. If they can't see immediately that you can do what they want, they're just going to go find the next person. And they're going to be comparing you to multiple other suppliers. So it's just making sure that your website is showcasing why you're different, that you're right for them, and just make it easy for them to understand that. And then they'll be more likely to send an inquiry.
I think, what What do you think makes somebody feel ready to inquire rather than just browse and leave? What do you think it is that either for them in their own kind of sales process of planning their wedding, or when they come to a website? Because I think a lot of people assume that every visit to your website carries the same sort of weight, but actually couples go through a whole journey of what they need to see. They need to, all of the things that you've said, which would build know, like, and trust, but also reflect the day, not make them feel like they have to do too much of that work. Also, people will go through their own kind of cycle in terms of planning a wedding, right? And actually, you may be a supplier that comes quite close to the beginning. Maybe you're a venue, or maybe you're a photographer and you're somebody, but actually maybe you're somebody that comes a little bit more in the middle, or actually somebody that couples don't tend to think about until they're well into their kind of planning processes. That's not to say that couples aren't going to find you at a different point to them personally feeling ready to inquire. What do you think makes somebody feel ready to inquire and ready to ask, are you available for my wedding, rather than just kind of click the X and go elsewhere?
I think even though we're talking about websites, I think Instagram and social media play a huge part in that, because they usually start off on your Instagram, or they might have found you through Google and then go to Instagram. And it's just making sure that if they found you on Instagram and they've, scrolled through all of your things, binge watched all of your reels and everything, then they click through to your website. It's making sure that your website is backing up that promise that Instagram has made. So if you've got one sort of style on Instagram, and it's all these, say you're a videographer, for example, say you've got this really quirky style of editing the wedding videos, and then they go through to your website and it's got maybe a YouTube clip, and it's like maybe the Instagram might be like really fast and quirky and fun, like a movie or like a TV show, and then they go through to your website and it's got just kind of like a standard wedding video. They're going to be like, oh, this is a bit of a disconnect. Like, why is this website that belongs to the same supplier like this, and why is their Instagram saying this? Which version am I going to get? So it's making sure that they probably have done a lot of research. And I think especially nowadays, maybe years and years and years ago, they might have gone to a wedding fair and they might have spoken to quite a few people and then had a call with them and then seen. Whereas now, because everything often is so readily available, they can go through your Instagram, see it all, and then be like, okay, now let's look on their website. And they're almost pre-qualifying themselves that, okay, actually, this person is probably going to be right for me. So whereas they might have started off and there might have been maybe 8 people that you're competing with, when they've narrowed it down and actually got in touch with you, I think by that point, they are more ready. Whereas years ago, they would have just inquired with loads of people and then chosen their person, but maybe gone to look around 10 venues. Whereas now, people look online, they look on TikTok, they look for weddings that have happened at the venues, or photos from the venues, videos from the venues, and then they narrow it down and they choose maybe 1 or 2, and then they go and see those in person. Whereas before, they might have gone and seen 10 in person and then chosen. But now people don't want to be bothered. They don't want to give you your email to then send them a brochure or anything like that. They just want to be able to see the information, know it, and then know, okay, this is right. And now I'm going to go ask for availability, or go and see the venue, or have a discovery call. And they're already narrowing it down themselves now, so that they know, okay, we're only going to have maybe 1 or 2 and then choose who we think is best.
And that's really the link there that I think I wanted to make. If the website does not create that process that helps them to feel certain enough to inquire, then your inquiry reply in the first place has to do more work, right? And that call, that consultation call, or that process that you have with somebody has to do more work. And then that follow-up afterwards has to answer all of those blocks, right? And sometimes suppliers blame the follow-up, or blame actually the couple more often than not, right? That as to why they're being ghosted. But actually that hesitation can actually start much, much earlier. Okay. I like to leave people with something practical, not in a massive go and rebuild your whole entire website overnight kind of way, because nobody needs that, but something they can actually look at with fresh eyes. If somebody listening goes away and opens their website after this episode, what are 3 things that you would want them to go and check?
Okay, the first one would be check you've got the call to actions. So guiding couples through your website on almost like a journey from start to end, make an inquiry. So make sure that you've got at least one on every single page at the bottom if you can, or if you may be linking to packages a little bit of the way down. I would also then check your about section, and rather than talking about you and just about you, reword it so that it's talking about you, but how that helps the couples and how that serves the couples and why that's good for them. And then I would also check your kind of first header statement. So how you've got the first section on your website, the copy there, rather than having something just basic, welcome to the website or welcome or luxury planner in London. Reword that to speak to the couples that you want to book and you want to attract, and how you can help them with that.
I really love that, because I think one of the biggest things people can do is stop looking at their website as themselves, right? And start to look at it as a slightly overwhelmed couple who's never met them before. This has been so good. And I think what I've really taken from it is that your website is not just a place where people come to see your work. It's definitely part of that trust building process, and 100% part of that sales process, and part of the experience really before the client even becomes the client. And definitely. That's the conversation really and shift that I want people listening to take away. Do not just ask, really, does my website look nice? But ask, is my website helping somebody feel confident enough to take that next step? And that is a different lens to look at it from. Before we wrap up, where can people find you, connect with you, and learn more about what you do at Kaluna and Time?
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for having me. So people can find me over on Instagram at Kaluna and Time, and my website, kalunaandtime.co.uk. And I've also created a website audit tool where you can do a diagnostic at the start.
Amazing.
Then it will share with you key things that you can change to do with your messaging, positioning, kind of things that we've spoken about on the podcast today. That is called My Little Pink Book, and I will share the link with Katie so you can go and have a look on there. But it's my sort of insider's guide to wedding business websites with my 14 years wedding industry experience built in there as well. So yeah, you can go and have a look over on there, or come and find me over on Instagram as well.
Amazing. I've really loved this conversation, and I know it's going to make people look at their website differently. And I definitely would recommend that you go and find Amber on Instagram. Her Instagram is such a sunny little place of the internet. It's so colourful and bright and happy, with some amazing kind of quick tips and things. And, you know, if this episode has made you think, please do not go and spiral and decide to rip your entire website apart, or do nothing either. I feel people go and fall into one of those two kind of camps, you know. Go and start with that audit that Amber is so generously offered, and go and have a little look and ask yourself, really, is my website making the decision easier for your ideal couple? And whether it's building that trust before they even inquire. And if you have listened to this episode, if you listened to the last episode on follow-up, you're probably hearing how connected all of this is. Your website, your inquiry reply, your brochure, your follow-up, your sales call, they are not separate pieces. They're all part of that same experience. And this is exactly the kind of thing I'm building into WedPro Studio. And WedPro Studio is the wedding business support system built to help suppliers with the parts of the business that actually create bookings, content, inquiries, sales, follow-up, and client experience. And WedPro Sales sits inside that, is being built to help suppliers handle inquiries, follow-ups, and sales conversations with more strategy and not more awkwardness. If you want to be part of the Founding 100 for WedPro Studio, go to Founding 100, that's FOUNDING 100.wedprostudio.com. Get your name on that list and you will hear more about it before anybody else. If you have enjoyed this episode, as Amber said before, like and subscribe. Please subscribe, share it with a wedding industry supplier who needs it. Pop over and give Amber a follow at Kaluna and Time, and come and DM me over on Instagram and tell me what part landed with you. I will see you next time. Thank you, Amber, so much for your time today. I will let you leave with your signature sign off, whatever that may be.
Oh, thank you very much, Katie. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, come and find me on Instagram if you need any help with your website at all.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Bye, guys.